Hello, good morning, everyone. I'm Tanuja Sachdev from the Department of Political Science. On behalf of IQAC Jesus and Mary College and the Public Policy and Analysis Cell, I extend a warm welcome to our distinguished speaker, Shri Anil Swaroop, and to all those attending the webinar today. Um, the Public Policy and Analysis Cell was started a year ago by students of different departments like commerce, political science, psychology, who wanted a forum for exploring career opportunities as policy professionals. And so, for the past 1 year, lectures and interactive sessions, workshops have been conducted with various experts, and it has been a very interesting start for our public policy cell. I would now like to invite our principal, Sister Dr. Rosalie, to address the audience. Sister?
Sister, your mic.
A very good morning and welcome to the staff and students of Jesus and Mary College and all the participants to this special webinar organized by IQAC in collaboration with the Public Policy and Analysis Cell of Jesus and Mary College. We are privileged to have with us Sri Anil Swaroop, IAS, who will speak to us on ethical dilemma of a civil servant. Thank you so much, sir, for spending your valuable time with us, sharing your experience and expertise, which will encourage our students. Not only encourage, but motivate and challenge our students. I am sure all of us will benefit from this useful and important insight into the life and profession of an IAS officer who will serve the country in all circumstances. Thank you so much, sir, for accepting our invitation. Before we begin this, let us invoke God's blessings on each one of us and on the whole world, so that we may be able to cope with this pandemic, unprecedented situation of COVID-19 and the lockdown with the blessings and grace of God. We shall overcome every situation, even the COVID-19 pandemic, and live a healthy, happy, and peaceful new normal life. We will look to the future with confidence. Amen. I congratulate the students, the members of the Public Policy and Analysis Cell who organized this webinar. Of course, I am grateful to the teachers who are responsible for guiding and coordinating their work throughout the year, and especially helping them with the webinar, with this webinar. Thank you, Ms. Tanuja Sachdeva and Ms. Megha and all the others who are part of this cell. Thank you so much. I also thank Dr. Amida Motwani, Dr. Alka Marwa, Alka Segal, Dr. Renu Gupta, and all the others who helped this to make this webinar as a thank you, Naveen, Ms. Vrinda, Shika, and all the others who helped us and supported us in this endeavor. Thank you and God bless you.
Thank you, sister. And sister, I take this. I mean, this is also an opportunity for us for Public Policy and Analysis Cell to express our thanks to you for permitting us to carry out the activities, and with your support and guidance, we've been able to conduct various events this year. Thank you so much from all of us, from the students and the teachers involved. Thank you, sister. And now I would request my young colleague, Megha Jacob, to welcome and introduce the speaker for today. Megha.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sister. It gives me great pleasure to introduce our esteemed speaker for the day, Shri Anil Swaroop IAS. His career as a civil servant spans over 38 long years. Before joining the Indian Administrative Service in 1981, he served the Indian Police Service for a year. He won the Director's Gold Medal for the Best Officer Trainee at the Lal Bahadur Shastri National Academy of Administration amongst the officers of his batch. As an IAS, he has held several assignments with both the state government, that is the Uttar Pradesh government, and the central government. During the final years of his career, he served as Secretary to the Government of India in the Ministry of Coal, where he handled the aftermath of the coal scam. Thereafter, he served as Secretary, School of Education and Literacy. He is also an author of several books, a strategic thinker, and an innovative leader who has won several awards and nominations. He is the author of books titled Not Just a Civil Servant and Ethical Dilemmas of a Civil Servant. We welcome you, sir. Our moderator for the day is Ms. Shobha Abraham, a second-year economics honors student and an active member of the Public Policy and Analysis Cell of Jesus and Mary College. During the session, we request the participants to post their questions in the chat box. The moderator will be choosing relevant questions due to paucity of time and will be requesting individual participants to read out their questions on the Google Meet to make it a much more interactive session. I request our speaker, Shri Anil Swaroop, to take over the session. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those very kind words, Megha, and good morning to everyone. What a pleasure it is to be back at the JNC, though not physically on this occasion, virtually, but it's a pleasure to be amongst you all. I also look forward to learn a lot during the course of the event today, and I'll share with you my thoughts about what I feel about the life of a civil servant, what are the dilemmas that a civil servant faces, and not to be overawed by those dilemmas and make the best use of the civil service or the civil services in India. I will start by mentioning about my own entry into the civil service. I joined the Indian Administrative Service because my father wanted me to join the civil service. I remember when I was 10 years of age, I came across a piece of paper where my dad had actually worked out the details of the journey that I would traverse to reach and become an Indian Administrative Service officer. And I fulfilled his dream. But once I did join the service, I realized that it is an absolutely amazing service. And in my book, Not Just a Civil Servant, the last chapter I write that if I were to be born again, I'd like to be an IS officer all over. For the simple reason that this service provides you amazing opportunities to do good to the poor. I don't think there's any other service anywhere else in the world which gives you that sort of opportunity. During the course of my career, there have been many experiences. I'll share some of them with you. But a scheme that I ran was Rashtriya Swasthya Bima Yojana, the health insurance scheme, which has now been morphed into Ayushman Bharat. You must have heard of it. Now, this is the scheme which impacted more than 35 million people. Now, where in the world would an officer or an individual at that level impact the lives of so many people? I remember distinctly, this scheme started out on a difficult note, but came to be recognized world over as one of the finest schemes in the world. World Bank, International Labour Organization, everyone recognized this scheme. And around that time, Mr. Obama took over as president of the US. And some of his advisors rang me up because US was running into problems with this health insurance scheme, their health insurance scheme. So they wanted to know what was happening in India. I tried to wriggle out because the contexts are totally different. India is different from the US. But they insisted that I should go over to Washington and make a presentation before their advisors. I did finally go over to the Brookings Institute, which houses some of the advisors of the administration there, made a presentation before them. And during the course of presentation, there were representatives of Gates Foundation, Rockefeller Foundation. You would have heard of these foundations which help poor countries. At the end of the presentation, we were having a cup of tea, and this guy from Gates Foundation walks up to me and he asks me, Mr. Swaroop, you are a civil servant, but you seem to be very passionate about what you're doing. What is the government giving you beyond your salary? It's a very interesting question. I didn't have an immediate answer, but I asked him a counter question. I asked him, Bill Gates Foundation gives millions of dollars to poor countries. What do you get out of it? He said, well, that's a job, but more than that, we derive a lot of satisfaction out of the service that we do to the poor. I said, you answered your question. The RSBY, the Rashtriya Swasthya Bima Yojana, is a scheme that is for the poorest of the poor in India, many of whom would have been dead but for the scheme. So the good wishes of those that survived and their families come back to me somehow, anyhow. That's good enough a kick for me to continue to do what I'm doing. And then I narrated a small incident to him. In this scheme, I used to visit these small hospitals. They were empaneled for this health scheme. I was visiting this hospital and I was talking to a patient beneficiary there. Suddenly, I heard a very feeble voice from behind. And there was this very old lady calling me, Beta idhar aao. I turned around and saw that this lady was so old and so frail that she could barely sit. So I went to her bed and I bent down and asked her, Mata ji, aap theek to hain? She said, Beta, main bahut takleef mein hoon, lekin in hospital walon ne mera bada khayal rakha hai. Then I said, you, तो आप ठीक हो जाएंगी, आप अपने घर जाएंगी. नहीं बेटा, मेरा तो कोई घर-वर नहीं, मैं झोपड़ी में रहती थी, भीख मांगती थी, मैं बीमार पड़ गई, तो तुम्हारा एक कार्ड मेरे पड़ोसी ने देखा. This was a smart card based insurance scheme. और वो मुझे यहाँ ले आया. और ये अस्पताल वाले मेरी सेवा कर रहे हैं, मेरे पास पैसे भी नहीं है देने को, मुझसे मांगते भी नहीं पैसे. Then I said, नहीं आप बिल्कुल ठीक हो जाएंगी, घर जाए. नहीं बेटा, मेरा कोई नहीं है, ना मेरा भाई है, ना बेटा, कोई नहीं है मेरा. मेरी उम्र अब इतनी हो गई, अब मैं ऊपर वाले के पास जाऊंगी. This carried on for about 15 seconds and then she made a very remarkable statement. She said, ऊपर वाले जाके एक बात जरूर कहूंगी, तुम्हारी स्कीम बहुत अच्छी है. Now, this is the kick that you get in the service. So there are huge opportunities. And as I go along today, I'll try and explain to you what are the opportunities and of course, what are the dilemmas. There are huge dilemmas. But that's the beauty of the service. The more challenges they are, the more enjoyment you get. Because once you start overcoming these challenges, you realize ultimately that there's no dilemma actually. You will begin with a dilemma. Later on, as you get more and more focused, as you get more and more clarity of thought in your mind, the dilemmas just wither away. But indeed, they do exist. So I distinctly remember when I had joined the service, initially there was a lot of problems. So in fact, my forthcoming book, Ethical Dilemmas of a Civil Servant, is sandwiched between that. Actually, those two couplets tell the story of the dilemma of a civil servant and how do you overcome them. It's not merely narrating a problem, it's actually giving you a direction as to how you can resolve issues through some practical experience. So there's no gyan in the book. Ethical Dilemmas is not replete with gyan. It is about practical experience on how to approach life, how to approach service. So the book begins with मुख्तसर सी जिंदगी के अजब से अफसाने हैं, यहाँ तीर भी चलाने हैं, परिंदे भी बचाने. This is the dilemma that the civil servant faces. It's a dilemma that you can't visualize at this point in time, but when you get into the service, you realize you have to perform, yet you have to tread carefully because you will get shot if you're not. So the challenges are there. But however, in the end, I say the last couplet, I mean, as I said, the book is sandwiched between the two. The last couplet is, खुद ही को कर बुलंद इतना कि हर तकदीर से पहले खुदा बंदे से कुछ पूछे, बता तेरी रजा क्या है. Depends on you. Why? The reason is very simple. There is no such thing as objective reality. It is how you interpret that reality that matters. Meaning thereby that in a similar situation, there are some people who feel happy, they're able to overcome. In the same situation, other one feels very let down, very disappointed. So it totally depends on you. Why? Because you have absolutely no control over the objective reality. You have no control over set of circumstances, but you have enormous control over yourself. It's the fundamental principle. But what we do is we try and find somebody else to blame for our own faults. उम्र भर यही भूल करता रहा गालिब, धूल चेहरे पे थी, आईना मलता रहा. That's what we do. I'm not saying others may not be responsible for your present state of affairs. They could jolly well be. But the practical point is that you can't do a nut to them. You can only do to yourself. Now, with this, so to say, theoretical background, let me give you some practical experiences where I learned over a period of time. I'm still learning. You always keep learning. But I learned over a period of time. I became wiser as I went along. And it made me easy for me to resolve the dilemmas that a civil servant face. And these are, you learn from small, small things. I mean, if you read My Experiments of Truth, it's a remarkable, perhaps one of the most remarkable books, not because it was written by the Mahatma. He became Mahatma much later. He wrote the book earlier. It's because these small things of life, if you manage, you'll be able to handle big things. So if you can manage your goat and the concerns for your goat, you can manage national crisis as well. So no problem, no issue is small. You learn from those small steps. That's the lesson that comes out of My Experiments of Truth. And I had my own experiments. I learned as I went along. I remember distinctly, after my stint as district magistrate Lakhimpur Kheri, I had been posted as special secretary to the chief minister, Mr. Kalyan Singh. These were early days. I had put in only 10, 11 years of service. I remember 1990 when I came to Lucknow as special secretary to Mr. Kalyan Singh. And on one day, he was very upset. It was early morning. He was very upset. And the chief secretary, the director general of police, and I was standing there. I was standing in the center, and the chief secretary and DGP were on my either side. And the chief minister was very upset. He was very upset because he had to address 7 election meetings on a single day, and he said that he can't do that. And the meetings were on the following day. So he was asking his personal staff that who fixed these, and he wanted the last 2 meetings to be cancelled. Now, both the chief secretary and DGP were vehemently agreeing with him. They were agreeing with him and shaking their head. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I couldn't resist, And it was one of the initial few dilemmas I faced, that should I speak out? Because none of my business, actually, it was basically a political issue. I have narrated that in my forthcoming book, Ethical Dilemmas of a Civil Servant. But I couldn't stop myself. If it were to be now, I'll do it immediately. Then it was a dilemma because I was not sure whether I should speak or not. So I spoke out. I said, sir, it was a conversation in Hindi. I said, sir, I was a district magistrate a few months ago. And when a chief minister comes to a district, there's a lot of preparation, anticipation, expectation. So even if you have to go for a minute, even if you don't speak, but you must visit. No, he looked at it angrily towards me. How can I do that? Main kaise karunga? No, the moment he said that, both the chief secretary started nudging me like this to keep quiet. I didn't stop. I told the chief minister, sir, it's my job to tell you my view. Ultimately, you are going to decide whether you want to go there or not. So he kept looking at me. There was pin drop silence, and the chief secretary in the meanwhile was still nudging me, asking me to shut up. After 10-15 seconds, chief minister said, Anil ji, aap sahi keh rahe hain. That nudging of the chief secretary stopped immediately, and he said, haan, sir, Anil bilkul theek kar raha hai. Now, you learn as you go along. You have to be clear in your mind whether what you say is right and when and where to express. Now, whatever I tell you today, and my young friends sitting here who would want to get into civil service, and by God's grace, they would make it to civil service, you have to be clear here. You have to know what you want. You can listen to others, you can take advice from others, but ultimately choice has to be yours. You have to make a choice. That's the dilemma. And you learn as you go along. You determine what is right and what is wrong. And nobody else can determine it for you. They can tell you, they can advise you. So listen to everyone, keep your eyes and ears open. But ultimate decision maker is you. You have to decide whether a thing is right and then take the responsibility thereof. I've seen people shying away from this responsibility. You will grow in strength if you have the strength to take the responsibility of the decisions that you take, and you'll be able to take responsibility of your decisions if you determine the decisions yourself. That's the dilemma that you'll face as you go along. There are a number of such dilemmas. And ultimately, you will have to internally think as to what makes you feel good. I'll give you another incident, because these are choices that you have to make. Let me again explain to you, there are no universally acceptable ethical principles. Each individual has to determine. That's the difference between ethics and laws. Laws are codified and it's uniform for everybody. Ethical principles can vary from individual to individual, Within one's individual life, it will vary from time to time. You may start with certain set of ethical principles and you may change them as you go along. So they change vertically, they change horizontally, they change geographically. So ethical principles are different for you. Have to determine your ethical principles. They will certainly be influenced by the manner in which you grow in your family, in your friend circle, in your school. They will influence your principles, your moral values. But ultimately, they are yours. You have to own them up. Nowhere, I would never suggest to anybody that you blame somebody else. You have to decide what are your ethical principles. So that's the fundamental difference you must understand between ethical. So for example, for some people, eating non-vegetarian food would be unethical. For others, it doesn't really matter. For an individual also, he may start as a non-vegetarian, become a vegetarian. He may start as a vegetarian, become a non-vegetarian. So ethical values also change. But you have to take responsibility of the values that you have. Similarly, if you have to support your subordinates, there is no law that enjoins you to support your subordinate. There's no law. It's your own value system that will determine that if your subordinate of your colleague is in trouble, would you like to support him? Your personal value system. Decide it for yourself. I'll give you an example here. I had returned from Delhi and I was posted as Secretary Horticulture in Lucknow. One fine morning, and Lucknow was in a very bad shape. I was talking of 2003 when all institutions had collapsed, corruption was at its worst. So I got an order from my minister, a very simple 2-line order asking me to suspend a deputy director of horticulture. There was no reason given. So I rang up the minister. I asked him, "Sir, you've asked me to suspend this deputy director. What has he done?" He said he didn't come to meet me. I said, "Sir, this is too small a reason for you to suspend somebody." But anyway, I'll find out from the officer. The minister didn't say anything. So I rang up the officer. I did some inquiries about the officer, and he had a fantastic reputation, lovely, wonderful officer, very honest. So I spoke to him. I asked him, "Yaar, tu milne kyun nahi gaye mantri ji se? He's very annoyed. He wants me to suspend you." He said, "Sir, मैं उनसे कई बार मिल चुका हूँ, लेकिन जैसे वो मिलना चाह रहे हैं, मैं नहीं मिल पा रहा हूँ." Now you won't understand this language in UP. They understand. This minister was corrupt. He wanted money from this officer, and this officer was not willing to pay up, so he wanted to suspend him. As simple as that. Now what do? Now, if you want to be ethical, like I wanted to support this officer, you better know your rules well. Because purely being ethical, you will be hit out of the court. You have to know your rules. I knew my rules. If I disagreed with the minister, I could route the file through the chief secretary. Now, I had worked with the chief secretary, a very fine officer. I rang him up. I sought time and went and explained to him the background of the whole case. And then he advised clearly. He said, "Tum file mujhe bhej do. Let's see what happens." Now, here again, I'm telling you a few things. You have no control over the ultimate results, but you have phenomenal control over your karma. We all keep talking about, but we are so hassled about results. If you start focusing on your karma and you start enjoying that karma, I think life is set. So I thought I'll do my duty. If he gets protected, so be it. If he gets suspended, so be it. But I would have done my job. So I sent the file to the chief secretary. Now, this minister was very smart. He could speak to the chief secretary. He went and spoke to the chief minister. And I was transferred out. In those days, the only industry flourishing in the state of UP was transfer industry. So I was transferred out. So chief secretary was very upset. He called me. He said, "Yaar, tum usko bachane ke chakkar mein tumhara transfer ho gaya." I said, "Kyun pareshan hote hain? Transfer is like death for a civil servant. It is inevitable. It had to happen. Why do you worry? And I believe in Hindu philosophy. I'll be born again. You'll post me somewhere. No." So I hassled about transfer. Now, this was a conclusion that I arrived very soon in my career, made me very strong. Because the fundamental principle is, if you don't expect as a civil servant from the politician, you are taking away most of his strength. His strength is your weakness, or your weakness is strength. If you don't expect anything from the politicians, which I did very early in my career, then he can't take you for a ride. You will be able to do what you want to do. That's the key for success anywhere. Lessen your expectations, you are a king. So I was transferred out. So I was made managing director of state financial corporation called Pickup. It was at some point in time one of the finest corporations in the country. But over a period of time, it had fallen from grace. It had made losses for 7 consecutive years. And my job was basically to wind up that operation. So when I walked into this August building, those of you who are from Lucknow will know, this was one of the finest buildings in Gomti Nagar. The building was great, the institution had gone to dogs. When I walked into that building, it felt as I was like walking in a graveyard. Because everyone knew that I had come to wind up this organization and they would lose their job. I also initially didn't know what to do. And I did spend a few sleepless nights trying to figure out as to what could be done to this organization. I figured out what could be done. And then what I did was, I shared this thought with 300 odd officers at the headquarters, called them in a room. I said that this is the solution I have. And the option before you all is either die just now or live with me for next 6 months and attempt to implement this solution. And maybe you will be alive, but I don't guarantee you will still be dead. The organization could be dead. For whatever, I think the manner in which I spoke, probably I was able to convince them, they agreed with the approach. Now, I'm not going to the technical details. It's there in my book. So what happened in India, it's very easy to get an idea. So I had an idea. Today, an article has appeared in Guardian where I've used this phrase and I'll use them again. In a democracy like ours, for an idea to fructify, it has to be politically acceptable, socially desirable, technologically feasible, financially viable, administratively doable, and judicially tenable, a handful. And that's why, outsiders don't understand why things don't happen in the government. They say, "Kyun hota, kyun nahi?" Because the easiest thing is, in UP, we call them Rai Sahibs. They give advice and they walk away. They wouldn't have done anything in their lives, but they're very fond of giving advice. There's no dearth of advisors in this country. They wouldn't know. Like these days in COVID, almost everyone has an advice on how to handle it, without realizing that there are limitations within which the government works. I'm not trying to condone certain aspects of the government. What I'm trying to say repeatedly to my young friends here is, you must appreciate the ground reality in order to change it. You can't just have an idea. You can't live in a dreamer's world. No, you should dream, but your feet firmly on the ground. If you don't do that, you are in trouble, because then you'll be just a dreamer and not achieve anything in life. If you understand the ground reality, if you have your feet on the ground, there are chances that you'll be able to find a solution, not to merely suggest a solution. So here, I had suggested a solution on how to make it happen. The problem here was that the State Financial Corporation was borrowing money from SIDBI and lending it. Since it had run into trouble, they were entering into a one-time settlement. Those in economics would understand this. One-time settlement wherein they wrote off the interest and settled for just the principal. And to their creditors, that is SIDBI, they were paying interest. So it was destroying the balance sheet because the assets were getting depleted and liabilities stayed where they were. So my suggestion was, how about reversing it? So everyone agreed, yes, sir, if you get some interest from your debtors and ask the creditor to write off interest, it will be reversed and the balance sheet would improve. Now it's easier said than done. This was a good idea. How do you implement it? So I did two things, both of them partly unethical. Now, again, a choice that you have to make. So I rang up SIDBI chairman and I asked him, we owe you 250 crores of rupees, out of which the principal is only 80 crores and interest is 170 crores. If I pay you 80 crores, would you write off 170 crores? He said, how can we do that? It's not possible. I said, you do it in the same manner as you've done for 15 private sector entities, where you written off interest and you settle for principal. नहीं, आपके साथ कैसे करेंगे, sir? I said, why not? You tell me. नहीं, sir, बहुत difficult होगा. हमने कहा, देखिए ऐसा है. You give me an answer straight away, because I don't know whether you're aware. I have done a lot of research about you, and you haven't done research about me. Before I joined the IS, I was in the police. A couple of my batchmates are deputy director in CBI. All I have to do is to write a letter to them, merely stating this fact, that you are prepared to write off interest of private sector entities. For a public sector entities, you're saying no. Now, this was unethical. This was normally not done, but in the interest of the organization, I did it. It had the desired impact. The CMD next day rang me up. He said he's prepared to write off the interest. Now, I didn't have 70 crores. Where do I get 70 crores? So I went to Principal Secretary Finance and I told her, Madam, we owe SIDBI 250 crores. If you don't pay up, all these loans are state guaranteed and SIDBI will attach your treasuries and they will recover the amount. Then she asked me, kya kiya jaye? I said, Madam, I have found a solution. What have you found? I told her that I have spoken to MD SIDBI and is prepared to write off interest. She couldn't believe it. Consequent to which she gave me about 30 crores. I got 30 crores from the government, paid it to SIDBI, 60 crores interest was waived off. Suddenly the corporation came to profit. But the story doesn't end here. There were other things to be done. Money had to be recovered. So what did I do? Another unethical thing, so to say. How do you recover money? So what I did was, I called the most corrupt general manager for a cup of tea. And you must be wondering, why corrupt general manager? My understanding by then was that all those that were corrupt were generally very efficient. Otherwise, they would be behind the bars. So I called this guy over to my room. And I made a very interesting opening remark. I told him, yaar, is sanstha mein kab kuch bacha to hai nahi, tu choosoge kya? Now, this guy was shocked, because no matter how corrupt you are, you will not admit to being corrupt. You know, there were 93 people listening to me. How many of you are corrupt? Can you write on the right side? No one admits to being corrupt. And if you are actually corrupt, you will certainly, you vehemently oppose it. So he said, nahi sir, kaisi baat kar raha hai? I said, jo tumne kiya, beeti tahi bisar de, aake ki sud le. I am not concerned about what you do. Now you got to help me. You heard me out that we got to make recoveries, and you helped me doing the recoveries. He got down to business, recovered well, and we paid even more to Sydney through our recoveries. Since the organization now was doing well, the transfer industry came into motion. I was transferred out. It didn't really matter to me, but I pursued this guy, this general manager, the corrupt general manager. I used to find out about him, and people used to tell me, sir, wo to bilkul imandar ho gaya, na ek paisa leta hai, na deta hai. I was very pleasantly surprised. So I called him for a cup of tea. I asked him, I told him, people speak so highly of you. What brought you that change in you? He said, sir, जब आप 300 लोगों के सामने मेरी पीठ थपथपा के कहते थे कि संस्था में जो सुधार हो रहा है वो इसकी वजह से हो रहा है, सर मुझे मेरी छाती चौड़ी हो जाती थी. And the kick that I used to get, I never got it before. Now this term kick has been used in my book. If you remember the RSBY story, I used the word kick. Now each one of you has to discover your own kick. What gives you kick in life? I can't define it for you. A cone of ice cream can give you that kick. Some wonderful music. I call it meditation. What gives you kick is totally personal to you, but you try and achieve that kick. You have to aspire to achieve that kick. So as I said, a civil servant faces enormous number of dilemmas. I can go on and on. There is about a few 7-8 minutes left. I narrate a couple of more incidents where I did face these dilemmas. Most of these dilemmas are in my forthcoming book, Ethical Dilemmas of a Civil Servant. Those of you interested, it's about to be released. Unfortunately, this morning, my publisher informed me, it's there on the Kindle now. It's available on Amazon. All these incidents are there. When I took over as Coal Secretary, when I was posted as Coal Secretary, anything that could have gone wrong had actually gone wrong with the coal sector. All the scams had broken through. So I rang up a friend of mine. I didn't know much about the sector, so I asked him, yaar, ye coal sector kaisa hai? He said, sir, aapne Gangs of Wasseypur dekhi hai kya? That actually, sometimes, the questions answer your questions. So I knew what I was getting into. But, if by that time I had put in almost more than 30 years in civil service, I had matured a bit. And I had become so optimistic at that point. I still am. I'm basically optimistic. So if you are down-hearted optimist and you are positive in your approach, you start looking at every problem in a positive manner. How did I look at coal? Because I remember when I walked into that office of Coal Secretary, CBI was chasing files, it was chasing officers. They were all very demoralized. Now, if everyone is demoralized, how do you move? No matter how good you are, if you're not upbeat, you won't be able to deliver anything. How I looked at that situation? I looked at it this way, that the situation was so bad in coal that it couldn't become worse. So anything that would happen would be an improvement, and I could walk away with that credit. But fortunately, I ran into an absolutely amazing team, brilliant team, absolutely. I could take them anywhere. That we could turn around the coal sector. Again, there are a few chapters in my book. We turned around the coal sector from acute shortage of coal to a point where we were toying with the idea of exporting coal to Bangladesh. And situation has become so positive that in my room, there used to be, we used to joke amongst ourselves, give us the Kashmir problem and we just might be able to find a solution to that problem. Now, why am I making this point here? When you face these dilemmas, if you are wound in a manner, if your wiring inside you is in a manner to look for solutions, you'll find solutions. Dilemmas will cease. Some of you must have faced it. 3 years ago, there was this CBSE paper leak. You must have seen it. Some of you must have suffered it. There was this CBSE paper leak. And my minister said that we'll have to remove Chairman CBSE. And I asked him, sir, tell me what is her fault? No, just to diffuse the situation. Now here, I was contesting the idea of the minister because I knew that the officer had not done any wrong, and he was one of the most brilliant, or she was one of the most, fortunately, she's now the Secretary of School Education now. She succeeded me. An absolutely amazing officer, Anita Karwal, she would have been shown the door. Now, I had to package this idea, come back to those political acceptability part, in a manner that the minister accepted it. That's the challenge you have. The dilemma was whether I allow my officer to go out or to protect her. I decided to protect her. But I had to package my idea in a manner so that it became politically acceptable to the political master. I initially did not have an answer, but then I asked him, sir, if you remove Anita Karwal just now, right now the whole pressure is on Anita Karwal. She's acting as a buffer between you and the media. The moment you remove her, the entire media will be after you. They'll ask for your resignation. This point he understood. You know, whenever you carry a proposition to somebody, you should be able to convey a value proposition to the stakeholder, the concerned person. Like in a private sector, you want to sell a product, you make the product, you package it in a manner so that the consumer consumes it. So is true with the ideas. If you can't package it in that manner, the consumer will not accept it. That consumer could be your boss, you could be a colleague, you could son, daughter, anybody. My granddaughters now, these days I'm struggling to package things for them to accept what I tell them. And that's a great challenge, and I'm learning a lot. How do you convince them into believing what I'm saying is correct? No, you can't, these days you can't ride a roughshod over everybody. You have to package your ideas. You have to be communicative enough to do it. So that's the challenge. I can go on and on, but I'll conclude with just one thing, and then probably I'll spend more time interacting with you all. If you want to be a successful person in life, there are 2-3 things that you have to keep in mind. One, don't spend unnecessary time over the past. It's dead and gone. But if you look at your own self, you'll realize that the amount of time you spend on what has already gone is enormous, and you waste that time. You're not focusing on the present. You're doing it the past. It's dead and gone. I think now we have 94 people sitting here. Can anybody change his past? It's done. Yes, you can learn from the past. So that's lesson number 1. Number 2, as I mentioned earlier, you can't do a nut to others. You have to become selfish in that context. You have to change yourself. Khudi ko kar buland apna. You have to do it yourself. Because unless you do your own khudi buland, you will never be able to lead the pack. You'll never become a leader. मैं अकेला ही चला था जाने बे मंजिल मगर लोग साथ आते गए कारवां बनता गया. ये आपका कारवां तभी बनेगा जब आप अपनी खुदी को बुलंद करेंगे. That's very important. And third, and most importantly, we waste so much time over issues over which we have absolutely no control. It's crazy. वो धोनी ने वो शॉट क्यों खेल दिया? अगर नहीं खेलता तो इंडिया जीत जाती. अब इस पे लड़ाई हो रही है दोस्तों में. The point is, we have to know what we can control. There's no harm in discussing those things. I had just joined the civil service and I had got married, and I used to get very agitated as the traffic jams. Very agitated. खून खोलता था बिल्कुल. So one day my wife asked me, तुम इनका कुछ कर सकते हो? I said, कर तो कुछ नहीं सकते. तुम अपना खून क्यों खोला रहे हो? And I think that said it all. We get hassled over issues. And I'll conclude by a personal incident that happened when I was early in the police. There was a batchmate of mine who recently retired as a DGP. He walked up to me. Then he was a probationer, young probationer. He walked up to me. He asked me, boss, रात को नींद नहीं आ रही. मैंने क्या हो गया? Boss, पेट्रोलियम के दाम बहुत बढ़ रहे हैं. मैंने कहा दाम तो बढ़ रहे हैं, चिंता का विषय, बट रात की नींद क्यों हराम कर रहे हो? नहीं बॉस, देश की आर्थिक स्थिति पर कुप्रभाव पड़ेगा. Many people, not only now, there were times when everyone was bothered about the economy. I said, वो सब ठीक है, लेकिन तुम्हारे ना सोने से क्या आर्थिक स्थिति सुधर जाएगी? इकोनॉमी सुधर जाएगी? बोले यार वो तो नहीं सुधरेगी. तो हमने कहा यार चिंतन करो, मनन करो, हम लोग चर्चा करें, बट रात की नींद क्यों हराम कर रहे हो? हाँ यार बात तो सही कह रहा हो. चला गया. Comes back after 3 months and then tells me, बॉस रात को नींद नहीं आ रही. हमने कहा क्या हो गया? पेट्रोलियम के दाम तो अपने आप ठीक हो गए बिना तुम्हारे इंटरवेंशन के. नहीं बॉस, इंडिया की पॉपुलेशन बहुत बढ़ रही है. मैंने कहा रात को सो जाओ, अपने आप ठीक हो जाएगी. The point that I'm trying to drive home here is that we have to be clear in our mind as to what we can do. Otherwise, I've seen my own colleague officers getting very frustrated. And, the seminal statement by Ronald Niebuhr, I don't know whether you heard of his name, Lord, grant me the serenity to accept things I cannot change, courage to change things that I can, and the wisdom to understand the difference between the two. Thank you very much. I'll conclude here and we'll open the discussion.
Thank you, sir. I now call upon our moderator, Ms. Shobha Abraham, to start the Q&A session.
Good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good
So it was
afternoon.
a brilliant session, and we are so pleased that we could host you for a second time, although virtually, but it was a great session again.
I hope you don't remember the jokes that I narrated last time.
We enjoyed it all the same.
Good, thank you.
So let's head to our next segment. It is the question answer section. We've received a good response from our participants, and for a major part of this segment, we'll be leaving the floor open for the participants to directly have an interaction with you. So let's head to the first question that we received. The question goes as follows. When faced with an ethical dilemma during your official duty, it is often asked to take a decision which would cause less harm to society. So could you throw some light on this with respect to some recent events, like the case of the imprisonment of Safura Zargar, or the decision to open fire which claimed the lives of teenagers in Assam and Delhi over CAA protests?
You know, there is a full article in my book, and I'll narrate a personal incident. It will be very difficult for me to pass judgment because until you are there on the spot, you can't decide what is the right decision. You know, most of us decide distance away, sitting in air-conditioned comfort of our room, and take decision on what happened on the spot. But I'll tell you a similar situation. And I recently wrote an article in the New Indian Express on the duties of a civil servant, where in the context of law and order, he should not look at politician at all, because the lives of people are involved. Let me give you an example. I was posted as sub-divisional magistrate in Hardoi. This is 1984, and Mrs. Indira Gandhi had been assassinated. And all hell had broken loose. Most of you would not have been born then. All hell had broken loose. Even in Hardoi, you know, party workers of a particular party were burning the shops of select community. And I was there on the road trying to, you know, handle it. And I got this information that the ruling party, Congress MLA, was behind, the brain behind all this. So what do? I made out an NSA case. Now, he was a very powerful MLA. I made out an NSA case and sent it to the district magistrate. Because the district magistrate is empowered to take a decision on that. Now, district magistrate was very happy that I had sent him, but he couldn't take a decision because it was a very difficult decision to take. For him, it was an ethical dilemma. For me, dilemma was whether I sent a report or not. I sent a report. Now, I could do only that much. I could not hold him liable under NSA because the decision was with the district magistrate. But what happened was, this thing got revealed, and this MLA went and met a senior officer in Lucknow, and I was summoned to Lucknow, the appointment secretary who does all the transfers. So when he called me to Lucknow, he asked me to explain. I explained the whole thing. He also agreed with me, but then he made a very interesting offer. He said, "Yaar, tum apni report वापस ले लो." Now, there is no legality in all this. There is only ethics involved in it. I don't know whether he was being ethical or not. He must be having his own principles, and I don't know how to pass a judgment. I was very clear in my mind. I told him, "Sir, I have given my report now. If the district magistrate doesn't want to agree with me, he can reject my report. But why? How can I withdraw the report?" What happened thereafter? I returned to Hardoi, and I am told that I have been transferred out. So be it. Now, you can do only as much as you can do. In this particular case, take, for example, what happened in JNU, when the policeman was standing outside and, you know, there were goons entering into JNU. Now, given the set of circumstances and the limited information that I had, if I had been in that place, I would have stopped them. But it is wrong of me to pass a judgment sitting here because I may not be privy to the entire set of information. So we become judgmental sitting from a distance. Get the whole facts and take a view and take responsibility of it. I mean, my book is replete with such decisions where in another case, let me explain to you, I arrested the chief of the ruling party in a district as district magistrate. I arrested him. Why? Because he wanted to take a funeral procession during Babri Masjid time. A person had been murdered. He wanted to take a funeral procession. I knew there will be mayhem if he is allowed to do that. In the night, the chief minister rang me up. I told you a failure story. Let me give you the success story. The chief minister rang me up at 11 o'clock in the night. Anil ji, आपने हमारे अध्यक्ष जी को बंद कर दिया. हमने कहा साहब हाँ बंद किया है. क्यों किया? So I explained to him. उनको छोड़ नहीं सकते. मैंने कहा साहब हम छोड़ेंगे तो अगले दिन यहाँ riot होगा. And you are aware that this is the only district where we have not had to impose curfew. All other districts had curfew because here people believed if anyone does anything wrong, the district magistrate will put him behind the bars. So chief minister didn't say anything. He put the phone down. Then he rang me up again. He asked me, कोई रास्ता बताइए. हमने बड़ा सिंपल है सर रास्ता. आप इनसे अध्यक्ष जी से बात करके कहिए कि एक प्रोसेशन ना निकालें, बिकॉज आप ही की सरकार है, नुकसान हुआ और मेरे कहना सुनते नहीं है. आप बात करेंगे तो मान लेंगे, ये प्रोसेशन नहीं निकालेंगे हम छोड़ देंगे. You know, next morning he tells me प्रोसेशन नहीं निकालेंगे, हमने छोड़ दिया. Solved. And the chief minister awarded me as one of the finest district magistrates, though I had put his district head behind the bars. So this is a success story. The previous one was a failure where I was transferred out. You take it as it comes, because I have no control over my rewards, no? They will come the way it is. So I don't want to pass a judgment on what the incidents that you are giving, because I'm not privy to the entire information. My request to all of you that are a part of the seminar is, don't try to become judgmental. We normally, I also become judgmental. But until you have full factual command, don't get, you know, तो पढ़े लिखे और अनपढ़ में फर्क क्या होगा? If you also go by emotions and, you know, start deciding this is right, this is wrong, don't do that. Get the facts straight and then form an opinion. Don't become emotional about it.
Very well said, sir. Our next question is a short one, but a complicated one, I must say. What are the visions that guide competent officers in the Indian bureaucracy?
What are the
Visions.
visions?
Yes.
What is vision?
Yes. That guide competent officers in the Indian bureaucracy.
Oh, let me tell you, again, it will be difficult for me to define what is competence, because competence could be following what the politician says always and climbing up the ladder, there are many of them. Because each one may have a vision. You know, again, I am all against pontificating and telling others what to do. I can tell others what I did. I can tell what I thought was successful. Then it's for you to decide whether that's the right way to follow. So what I did was very clear. I mentioned it. I did not expect anything from the politician. Throughout my 38 years of career, I didn't go for anything to the politician. Nothing. Never. And they knew it, I knew it. And once they realized that this is the boundary that I draw with them, they respected me, I respected them. I had a great time with some of the politicians. I mean, I worked with some of the finest politicians, Mr. Kalyan Singh, Mr. Oscar Fernandez. They're very fine, Prakash Javadekar. These are all very fine people. But I ran into foul with some of the politicians. So be it, that's how life is, you know, everything is not correct. So you have to decide. So that's one. Number two, you have to have clarity of thought. It comes over a period of time. The confusion, the more cobwebs you have in your mind will lead to more confusion and more problems. If you are clear in your mind, but with an open mind, meaning thereby that you don't say what I say is right. You may be clear, but you are open to views and you can change your views. I did. In a number of cases, I did change my views. And then, of course, you have to have the integrity to pursue what you feel is right. Because the damage, more damage is being done to the system today is not so by financial dishonesty. It's the intellectual dishonesty that is destroying systems. Because financial dishonesty will mean that you take money in an instance. Intellectual dishonesty, you destroy institutions. So that, to my mind, is very important. And for vision, I have told everyone, I will tell you all also, don't try and look after the country and society. हर जना देश की चिंता में लगा है. देश का बेड़ा गर्क कर रखा है, देश की चिंता कर रहा है. I have advised everyone to become selfish. Become selfish. Improve yourself. That's the best way you can serve your country. Forget about others. Just focus on yourself. The moment you do that, and that's true of officers also, stop pontificating, stop telling others, learn from others. You know, the tragedy of our education system is we teach everyone to compete with others. No. Each individual is very different from the other individual. You have to compete with yourself and you have to learn from others. As an officer, you got to do that also. You can't keep competing. You'll make life your hell. When I was a student, the years, and there were some years I didn't come first in my class, I used to feel terrible. And today, no one asked me, किस class में 5th में first आए थे, 6th में second आए थे. क्या हुआ? It is meaningless, but we spend time so much on that. If you improve yourself, if you compete with yourself, and you learn from others, you won't be able to learn from others if you're competing with them, because वो भी अपनी copy छुपा लेगा, वो कहेगा मैं भी compete कर रहा हूँ. You can only learn if you are open. You can learn and then improve. That has to be the vision. वो बहुत बड़ा vision ना बनाइए. इतने visionary पढ़े हैं ना, देखो हर जना dream कर रहा है यहाँ पे. So many people are feet above the ground. Everyone is becoming a dreamer. अरे भाई धरातल पर जमीन पे पैर रखिए और एक एक करके कदम चलिए. अपने आप जर्नी बड़ी मजा आएगा. उसे एक कदम को enjoy कीजिए. Enjoy those small steps that you have. I am telling you, will travel far.
Great, sir. Our next question is interestingly, from our speaker for tomorrow, Shri Jitin Yadav, IAS. Shri Jitin, can you please ask your question directly to Sir Anand, sir?
Hi Jitin, how are you?
Good morning, sir. I'm
Morning,
good.
morning. I'm glad you're coming to speak to these young friends.
Yes, sir.
Jitin,
The
could you please
organizers.
show your face?
I mean, I'm sure, yeah, I thought you also grown a beard, that's why you're hiding.
Apparently,
Yes,
sir,
Jitin.
I'm on the field.
Okay.
So we have to move out, and sometimes people follow the beard as well. So my question is, this is my first posting as SDM in Cooch Behar, West Bengal. So most of the time, the real-time decision making takes place, and we get in the problem when it comes to professional ethics and personal ethics. I'll give a very small example. Let's have pawn shop owner. That area is on the encroached land, and professionally we are supposed to remove it. But when I talk to that person personally, my voice of conscience tells me that it should not be done because that home won't be running after that. So these small issues matter a lot. So professionally, we'll be able to figure it out in a simpler way that we are supposed to remove that encroachment. It's very simple, but we have to remove that dissonance within us. Otherwise, they'll get problem in the future as well. So many a times I feel these ethical dilemma between professional ethics and personal ethics. That's my question.
You are absolutely correct, Jitin. It is not merely the professional and personal dilemma. You will see there are varieties of obligations that you have. You have a political obligation, you have a social obligation, you have a family obligation, you have financial obligation. These obligations will conflict. That's what dilemma is. And you, as you grow, you will start resolving them. So let me look at the dilemma that you're facing. Can you think in terms of relocating this pawn shop somewhere? I'm not saying that is the solution. Can he be relocated somewhere so that the encroachment also gets removed? Government and my time used to have these schemes of resettling such encroachers somewhere. I'm not saying that's the solution, but as you grow along, you'll start finding out of the box solutions for such problems and you'll be able to resolve dilemma. Now that you've raised this issue, let me give you a very interesting example of a huge dilemma where out of the box solution came. That also is a part of my book. When I was made additional secretary in the cabinet secretariat, and I was heading a group called Project Monitoring Group in 2013 when all scams had broken and no investment was happening because no civil servant was signing the files. He had this dilemma that if he signed the file, he'll be hauled up. Many civil servants were hauled up for no fault of theirs. They were not signing it. How do you resolve that dilemma? Now, it is dissimilar from what you're saying, but that's a huge dilemma because professionally, I have to take a decision on the file. Personally, I feel that if I sign on the file, even if I'm not at fault, I'll be hauled up. Mr. Harish Gupta's case is a classic case where there's no fault of his, he was hauled up. So that's a dilemma. How do you sort it out? And I have a solution for that. In fact, in my book, I've written how, and recently I wrote an article on how a civil servant can come out of this dilemma through use of technology and transparency. So we set up a portal wherein any industry, because I was handling projects about 1,000 crore when Commonwealth game scam and coal scam had happened. And we cleared projects worth 5 lakh crores in 15 months of UPA 2 when scams were breaking down with nobody raising a full finger towards me. We sorted out through use of technology by asking these industry that have a problem to put their problem on the portal, which was public portal. The problem was directly sent to a concerned joint secretary. He was asked to comment on the portal itself on why is he sitting on the file. And then I used to have tripartite discussion and dictate the decision on the portal directly. Now, why I was doing that? We are all prone to taking wrong decisions. But if there's no malafide, I will not hide it. The moment it goes in public domain, no one will blame me for malafide. Problem solved. Now, I'm not saying that's the only way to solve the problem. We as civil servants will have to evolve innovatively to resolve this dilemma. That's what the ethical dilemma is. So I don't have a real solution to the problem that you face, but over a period of time, you realize that you'll be able to find ways to find solutions to such problems.
Thank you, sir.
Nice to see you.
So we head to our next question. It is from an assistant professor at JMC itself. She is a big help in arranging all these webinars. She's a technical backbone for all of us. So question from Professor Vrinda Muda. Ma'am?
Yeah.
You could ask to sir directly. Yes.
Good morning, sir. It was very wonderful to hear you. And my question to you, sir, is that do you think that are we losing some very important or very talented individuals because just because that there is so much of political interference in the system, and they feel a lot of ethical dilemma to serve the society. So they quit just because they don't think that they will be able to handle that dilemma. So what is your opinion on that, and how do you think that we can solve that thing?
Okay, so you've raised a very pertinent point because a lot of officers are getting disillusioned as they get into the service. And that's where I had quoted from Reinhold Niebuhr. They've suffered that problem. They come and join the service as, so to say, revolutionaries who want to change things. And I keep telling them, be a fast evolutionary. If you want to become a revolutionary, pick up a jhadu and join a political party. But here in the government service, if you join, there are limitations within which you work. And you can bring about a change. You look at people who have brought about a change. In fact, I am counseling hundreds of IS officers, junior IS officers, who come up with such issues with me, some of whom I am unable to convince and they resign. But then many of them come back to the stream because they realize the limitations. You know, we must understand the limitations within which we work. And I give simple examples to them. I tell them, we are in the habit of blaming politicians for everything. Now tell me, which politician asked you to come late to the office? Which politician asked you to keep your room dirty? Which politicians ask you not to speak politely to those that come to meet you? Which politician has asked you to be abrasive? Now, so many things, but politician is nowhere in the picture. My personal experience tells me 90% of the cases he has no role to play. But we keep focusing on that 10% and keep blaming politicians. There will be cases where you will not be able to carry out what you want to do. Again, I give you an example. I give you an example of Chairman CBSE who I protected. 4 months before that, I could not protect another officer. Despite the best of my efforts, he resigned from the IS, Santosh Matthews. He was chairman of National Council for Teacher Education, and he was taking on the biggest mafias in the school education system. The D.Ed and B.Ed, B.Ed colleges, 25% of them do not exist, but they can give you a degree, and he wanted to take them on. Now, initially, he got all the support from me and everyone, but thereafter, the courts went after him. And when the courts went after him, the politicians also backed out. He resigned in disgust. So that's a failure. But the point that I'm trying to make here is that I have to make my efforts to see that whatever contribution, whatever little contribution I can make, am I making? The question that I have to ask myself, whether I did what I could in the given set of circumstances. And the answer can only be given by me, nobody else. Because apne aap se jhoot nahi bolta na aadmi. But if you start feeling frustrated and bring about a change, where, I mean, I'm in touch with some people who resigned from the IS, and let me tell you, they're equally frustrated there. So the problem was not with the set of circumstances, problem was with them. Because you don't have, as I keep saying, any control over set of circumstances. Why curse them? Why curse the darkness? Light a small candle, no? And live with that candle. I'm telling you with my personal experience, the glow grows as you go along. It does not remain a candle. You can light many candles, but don't try and bring sunlight, because that only Lord can do. It happens in the morning. I can't do it. I can light a few candles, do that, and derive satisfaction out of it.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your answer.
So we have a question from Garima Kalita. I request Garima to unmute and kindly ask your question directly to sir.
Just a minute. Before that, Garima, our next speaker for tomorrow, Mr. Jitin Yadav, he is asking him if he was allowed to make a point. He's asking, sir.
Oh, yes, certainly. He's most welcome.
So I joined in August last year. And with these kind of dilemmas, I also had in mind, how to interact with the politicians, the chairman of the municipality, the ministry is also here. So in the past 10 months, the kind of experience I had with these people was, at the end of the day, they also know what we are going through. So if we consider all the stakeholders into picture, and our conduct within the first couple of months decide how the things would be. So if you are straightforward, we talk to them in a straightforward manner without diverting the questions here and there. Most of the people, they realize, look, this person is like this. We can't cross the line with this person, and things would go smoothly. So in the past 10 to 11 months, I have not faced a single problem with respect to the politicians, because they've never crossed the line, because they know that, okay, this person won't talk much regarding these things. So to some extent, they also know what we are going through, and we also know what they are going through. So there is a very thin line in between, like who will cross that line first. So till now, it's past, in the past 11 months, so far things are good. Thanks to COVID also, because of COVID, the bureaucracy became powerful on the ground, and the politicians don't have a say in these type of things. Relatively, if I see, sir, in Bengal, uh, politics is at every tea stall in Bengal. So,
Absolutely, Jitin. I'm so glad you say what you say. All I can say is that you become wiser much earlier than I did. At your age and seniority, I was really struggling. And you have become wiser much faster. God bless you. Keep up this wonderful work. Keep inspiring others. Keep talking. I'm so glad JMC has invited a young officer like Jitin. He will carry much more conviction than this old man like me. I played my innings. He's still there. He's still in that pool trying to swim. And I can tell you, Jitin, if you can do it in West Bengal, you can do it anywhere in the world.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
That was great, sir. So our next question is from, we take a question from Neeta Tiwari. Neeta, could you please unmute and ask your question to sir?
First of all, good morning to all of you. My question is about the education system because I'm from education department. So yeah, when it comes to the education system, the out-of-the-box ideas are often kept out of the class, sometimes even out of the system. As you said, we need to be selfish in order to make ourselves grow. Here is my question. How can we help, like, not exactly help, but how can we make the system inclusive and encouraging for everyone? Because I feel most of the times we kept people out of the box, like who have out of the box ideas, we kept them out of the class as well. So I just want to ask how we can make our classes more inclusive and encouraging.
It's a normal tendency of a human being to believe that what he or she says is the right thing. We are not normally, we are not built way to accept things that are told to us. Now, how do you change it? There is an old saying, no, charity begins at home. Start with yourself. I'm assuming that you are a teacher. Is my understanding correct?
I'm a pupil teacher right now.
Okay, great. So you can still, you can still start with yourself. Encourage people to come up with out-of-the-box ideas. Let some value be created around these out-of-box ideas. Once people start appreciating the value of an out-of-box idea, they will start encouraging. But you have to do it yourself. And I'll tell you, in my career of 38 years, much of the problems that we managed to solve in most of the cases was on account of out-of-the-box ideas. And there were people who were appreciative of it. In the beginning, there is a resistance, but once they understand that it is not out of the world, it is out of the box, and it is doable. So again, packaging of that idea becomes very important. How do you convey? And I mean, this is not the occasion to tell you, but I keep telling my officers, you have to develop those communication skills to be able to communicate that idea in a manner that it becomes, first of all, intelligible and then acceptable to the recipient. So that's very important.
Okay, sir. We have a question from Mr. Mayank Kumar. Mr. Mayank, can you please read your question? Sir?
Yes, good morning, sir. My question is that how can we in between duty and humanity in some situations, how can an administrator choose during his official hour, like a group of protesters, there are some women also, so how can we deal them like Shaheen Bagh and others?
Good. Let me give you an example how I handled it. Again, as I keep saying, I can't pontificate. I'll give you my own example. I was district magistrate Lakhimpur Kheri, and the Mandal Commission report had come, and many of you would not have been born then. All hell had broken loose. Children were, putting themselves on fire. A lot of things were happening. And in the district also, there was a lot of trouble. and I was asked to manage a trouble which was not of my making. Some politician somewhere decided it, and we were asked to handle it. So I remember one morning I had just reached my collectorate and I was sitting inside. I heard these slogans, and they were all slogans coming up from young girls. No? So I asked my orderly, क्या है? बोले सर वो करीब 500 लड़कियां जो हैं वो कलेक्ट्रेट का घेराव कर रखा है. Where I was sitting there, घेराव 500 girls, class 11, 12. So and he said that they want to meet you. I said, ठीक है, हम चलते हैं मिलने. So, again, normally it's not done. They come to your chamber. I went out, and they gave me a representation. They were shouting slogans. They gave me a representation. ये गलत हुआ, क्या हुआ? So I sympathized with them. I said कि नहीं आपका कथन ठीक है. So as I was about to go back to my room, they around me. They didn't allow me to go. So I asked my orderly to get a chair. So he got me a chair. I sat with those girls and started conversing with them. Now I knew that these girls are not to be blamed. They are hit by a particular, announcement of the government, and they should be allowed to air their views. So I started conversing with them, but I had to diffuse the situation. How do you diffuse that situation? Though I was sympathetic to what they were saying, I could not take action against them. As you said, I couldn't use bait and charge or anything. I had to somehow diffuse. So I started conversing with them. And this also is there in my book. So I asked them, in conversation, I asked them, have you read the Mandal Commission report? So I looked around to see if anybody had read it. So there was nobody nodding. So no one had read it. Then I said, have you seen the Mandal Commission report? How many volumes are there? So no one had seen the Mandal Commission report also. They all vaguely read it in newspapers and they were reacting. So I said, why are you agitating? You are agitating because you think that your opportunities to get government job will come down in case Mandal Commission is implemented. Yes, sir. We will not get opportunity. I said, then you will in any case not get a job, government job. Now they looked perplexed and looked at me. Why? I said, you see that police wala behind you? He's jotting down your names. Because you're sitting here, he's jotting down the names. And when you get into civil service, there's a police verification. And your name will be there in the thana that you are agitating here. And you will be deprived of government service. So you think over it. I agree with what you're saying. But is this the way of going about it where you'll be deprived of what you want to do? This conversation is very, very easy, relaxed atmosphere because they knew that I had nothing to do with it. I was only the representative of the government. What impact it had was gradually the girls started going away. Because they realized that the wrong was not done by me, but they might end up losing the job. In the end, there were about 10, 12 girls left. So I invited them to my room, had a cup of tea with them, called their parents, and had an open discussion with them. They said, you made your point. You give your representation. By sitting here, what will you gain? Now, they may or may not have agreed, but fortunately they agreed, and the whole situation was diffused. So I'm not saying there is a cut and dried way of sorting out things. There are dilemmas on what do you do to these children, because it's not their fault. They are reacting to a situation created by an outsider. So if you give me a specific example, I'll tell you how to handle it. But I can't say what is the choice between wisdom and administration. These are general concepts, very difficult to, come out what is wiser of the two.
We've connected with Gargi Kalita. She will be reading her question now. Over to you, Gargi. Garima.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, Garima.
Sir, in your talk, you mentioned that civil servants should not succumb to the pressure of the corrupt politicians. Sir, but isn't this what happens most of the time? No matter how righteous a civil servant is, most of the time he or she succumbs to the will of the corrupt politicians, and as such, they're not able to perform their duty effectively. So I would like to know what can be done so that the influence of the politicians over the functioning of a civil servant can be lessened, so that the civil servant can do what he or she is actually supposed to do, serve the public interest and not the will of some handful of corrupted and greedy political figures.
Garima, how do you assume that the politician is the only person who's corrupt and all civil servants are honest? How do you assume that every time the politician is wrong and the bureaucrat is right? We live in the same society. There are as many corrupt politicians as corrupt bureaucrats. So let's not generalize and say that bureaucrats should be allowed a free hand in doing what they want to do. They'll become as corrupt as politicians. They are part of the society. So let's not talk in general terms. My contention is very simple. irrespective of what the politicians say. If a civil servant wants to perform, he'll be able to perform. And I can give you examples after examples after examples. It's very easy to blame somebody else and say that it's because of politicians. My dear friend, we have consciously decided to be a democratic existence. We are a democratic government where politicians have the final say. They are responsible for the people, to the people. Who am I responsible to as a civil servant? Nobody. My responsibility is to somebody, my boss or somebody else. We are not directly responsible to the people, the politician is. So let's try and understand. Let's not go by our prejudices of what is painted about politicians. Yes, politicians, there are certain politicians which are wrong, bad, dishonest. So are some civil servants. So instead of, painting everyone with the same brush and saying that all politicians are corrupt and all bureaucrats are okay and you do it, I don't think that's the right approach. But given the set of circumstances, as I said earlier, I've come across fabulous civil servants, I've come across fabulous politicians. But as I said, you don't have control over politicians. You have control over yourself. Tell me, you say corrupt politicians. If a civil servant, let me tell you in the IS, if he doesn't want to become corrupt, this is the service you can continue to be honest and perform. I can tell you with my personal experience, not only many such experiences. So it's wrong to say that you can't. And in any case, as I said, you have no control over politicians. You have control over yourself. And you just heard Jitin, a young officer, who's doing it despite the politicians. So you can't do much to the politicians where there's no point in, talking negatively about them or criticizing them.
Thank you, sir.
In continuation with this question, we have one from Manas Dikshit. Mr. Manas, can you please ask your question to sir?
Very good afternoon to you, sir.
Good afternoon.
Sir, my question to you is that, sir, what are the solutions with which we can come to ensure minimum political interference in the bureaucracy?
So why do you want to minimize political interference? You just heard Jitin Yadav. He says, it depends on that individual how much. The politician will interfere. That's his job. You can't. Why do you want to minimize it? After all, we are in democracy. Ultimately, he determines what's going to happen. But if you are sure of yourself, if you are able to deliver, he will not trouble you. Why a particular civil servant gets troubled and another doesn't get troubled? I am surprised that officers keep getting transferred and they get very upset about it. Why? I mean, why? The politician obviously will do what he has to do. You can't do not to him, but you can do to yourself. Now, if you tell me that there's no civil servant who's not performing because of political interference, I won't agree with you. The large number of civil servants are able to perform in these set of circumstances. And the question is, who am I looking at? Who am I seeking my inspiration from? Am I seeking my inspiration from those that are performing honestly, or I'm looking at only such bureaucrats who keep crying and saying because of political indifference I can't perform? Both type of people exist. You have to look at where you have got to look at. Now, I can't continue to sympathize with people who are unable to deliver despite the opportunities that they have. Obviously, this politician has his own agenda. But if you draw a line, if you work appropriately, you'll be allowed to do work. Many of them do it.
Right, sir. So we have a question from Nikita Bhatia. Ms. Nikita, can you please pose a question?
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, Nikita.
So my question to you is, has there been any decision or experience which has personally affected you? Like you talked about Mandal Commission and students burning themselves. So has it ever touched you, or something which has emotionally impacted your life?
Many, not one, many. Read the book and you'll find those instances. Let me narrate one to you. I was on the hit list of the terrorists in Kiri because we had shot down 5 terrorists. I never told this to my family. I was on the hit list and I got to know it also a bit later than what I should have. But I was aware of that. So you do get personally impacted. It's not that you don't. I was not hit, fortunately, but I was on the hit list all right. And there are many such instances, they are there in my book, where I got personally impacted. But that's what life is. Are you looking at a perfect life somewhere? Give me an example of a perfect life. Who had a perfect life? Did Mahatma Gandhi have it? Did Abraham Lincoln have it? Did Jawaharlal Nehru have it? Who had a perfect life? We all have our problems. You have to live with those problems and make the best out of it.
Thank you, sir.
Next question from Ananya Garkoti. Kindly pose your question to sir.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Sir, whatever points you explained, along with the ethical principles of yours, are a reflection of spiritualism. I feel that it should be introduced in our education system. The points which you have said in this webinar about focusing on your karma, focusing on the present and not worrying about the past. So what are your opinions on this? That because I think so the teenagers should know about these things, how to control your mind, how to look after yourself, your mental health, whatever you are doing, how to focus on the present things which you are doing. So what are your opinions on this, whether it should be introduced in our education system or not?
No, it should not be a part of the curriculum. Yet you should have speakers, as you are having, who come and share their experiences. If it comes as a gyan, which most of the gyanis give without their any personal experience, then there is a problem. Then it becomes another subject. It will increase the weight of your school bag. I don't want it to be introduced as a subject. But yes, get practitioners who've been through life, who experience themselves, let them share their experiences. It will carry much more conviction and stick to your mind. Otherwise, books don't. So get practitioners to speak to you much beyond gyan. It should not be reduced to, I'm sorry for using this word. This gyan is too much. We have so many gyanis around who keep telling you what should be done without having done what they ought to have done. So I am not in favor of that. And as far as spiritualism is concerned, I'm still trying to find what it is.
We have a question from Vaishnavi Tiwari. Ms. Vaishnavi, can you kindly ask to sir? You may unmute yourself and ask the question.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, Vaishnavi.
It's an absolute delight to be able to witness your.
You are Vaishnavi, who was my host last year. Is that here? Oh,
yes.
Wow.
It's
Wonderful.
an absolute delight to be able to.
Wonderful. So nice to have you on the show.
Thank you.
Yes, please ask your question.
So at the beginning of the presentation, you highlighted how your successful administrative projects are also a result of kindling of ethical conduct within your subordinates or your teammates. So my question is, as a civil servant in a position of leadership, how can one bring such ethical consciousness in one's team members and subordinates?
By practicing it, by demonstrating that it is beneficial to you, to the system, and to the ultimate result. You know, any idea, if it is able to demonstrate its efficacy and its capability to bring about solutions, will be adopted much more than, as I said, simple gyan. So I remember distinctly as Coal Secretary, a joint secretary brought a file to me, and I, without reading it, I signed it. He was very surprised because things were happening in Coal Ministry. He said, "Sir, aapne file padhi nahi." So I said, "Yaar, Tihar jail saath chalenge, main akela thodi na jaunga." So he still remembers that. Tihar jail, you understood? So I said, if you commit a mistake, then you will be as much liable as I am, thereby conveying a message to him that I have total trust in him. You know, the biggest problem that I find in the civil service today, and even otherwise, is the distrust that we have for each other. And that creates a problem for everyone. If we start trusting people, you know, much of my problem was sorted out because I trusted a lot of people. There were a couple of occasions where people betrayed it, but then that would have happened otherwise also. But by and large, this trust enabled me to delegate. And I tell you, people don't believe me. As Secretary Government of India in Coal Ministry, after 2 years, I had only 45 minutes of work. As Secretary School Education, probably I was the only secretary leaving the office at 6 o'clock. Because I had found people who were better than me, who could do work better than me. I trusted them, delegated them, empowered them. They did much better than I would have done. Once you have that in you to trust people and delegate people, then you'll be able to convey important messages to them, which they will be able to adopt. Again, not gyan, not pontificating. Through your own actions, you are able to demonstrate to them that what you are telling them works.
We take our last question for the session from Vaibhav Sharma. Mr. Sharma, kindly ask your question.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, Vaibhav.
So my question is that is the personal reputation of an officer sometimes act as a barrier in decision making?
Not at all. In fact, if you evolve as an officer who's honest and efficient, it helps you enormously. the politician will think twice before asking you to do anything wrong. You know, over a period of time, I discovered no politician asked me to do anything wrong. People ask me, "Oh, gadbad, wo baat hi nahi karte the." It's a different matter. They will not post you there. So be it. Like posting ka maine theka thodi na liya. I mean, I have not predetermined I'll work here. Once you decide that, politician will think thrice, 4 times before telling you to do a wrong thing. I worked in very sensitive ministries, in coal ministry, in education ministry. Never ever did any politician ask me to do anything wrong. Yes, it happened in the beginning. In the beginning of my career, there were a number of occasions where such events happened. I conveyed a signal that I am not here for doing this. If you want somebody else, please bring him. I won't do it. And that again is there in book. As we are concluding, may I request all of you to join in this webinar on the 5th of July. Whoever can find time at 6 o'clock, you have people like Gurcharan Das and Shireen Bhan. They're also discussing the book. You have an occasion, please join us on the webinar. We'll be welcome. Thank you very much for inviting me here.
Thank you very much, sir. It was a pleasure hearing all the anecdotes that you mentioned. We really like to have more time and more interactions with you, but now due to a shortage of time, we'll have to wind up. So I'd like to invite Dr. Amita Motwani, the JMC Webinar Committee convener, to kindly present us with the vote of thanks. Amita ma'am? Yes, over to you.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
So, it's my pleasant duty to propose the vote of thanks. But before that, I must thank our speaker, Shri Anil Swaroop, first of all, for bringing ethics to life. You know, why I'm saying this is because I teach ethics in my class to business students, a subject called business ethics, which is applied ethics. But we teach only theory, which is mostly about how to decide what is the right thing to do. But with your experiences, the ones that you shared with us today, I could really see how you actually apply ethics in life. So it was really very fruitful for me personally, and I'm sure the students and other faculty who attended the webinar have gained a lot. One thing which I really learned and which is going to keep with me is that how do you communicate the value proposition to the stakeholder? So that does the thing. How do you make it, acceptable to the person across? That is a kind of fine art that one has to master. So thank you very much, sir, for enlightening us. And the recording will be put on YouTube, and I'm sure I'll go over it again because there is a lot of wisdom there which I need to again listen to and learn from. I must thank our principal, Sister Dr. Rosalie, who has given us this platform to organize these webinars and invite speakers to learn from. The IQAC convener, Dr. Alka Marwa, who unfortunately could not propose the vote of thanks, so I am standing in her shoes. The convener of Public Policy and Analysis Cell, Ms. Tanuja Sachdev, and the faculty advisor, Ms. Megha Jacob, for organizing this very useful webinar for us. Shobha Abraham for very efficiently moderating the session between the students who were asking questions and others. The team headed by Dr. Naveen Thomas and Ms. Brinda Moda, Ms. Ishita Singh, Ms. Priyanka Marwa, Dr. Shikha Singh, and Mr. Gaurav Verma, who made it possible for us to interact as if we are sitting with each other. The students team, Tanya, Nikita, Arundhati, Sonu, and Arpita, under the able leadership of the president of PTAC, Shreya. And last but not the least, all the participants who not only participated with a lot of energy and asked questions. So it was a wonderful session and all need to be thanked. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye. God bless you.
Thank you.